When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I smiled because I had learned long ago that tears sometimes don't change anything. That morning, I had come over to celebrate Mother's Day with my son and his family. I had baked his favorite cake, carefully wrapped it, and carried a bouquet of fresh flowers in my hands. My heart was full, and I was expecting at least a smile, maybe a warm hug from the people I loved the most. But instead, the house felt cold. I knocked gently on the door, and my daughter-in-law opened it with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mom," she said, her voice tight, "you can leave the gifts here. We're busy today." Busy. That word stung more than any sharp tone could have. I looked past her into the living room, and my son was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging me. I tried to put on a calm face, but inside, my chest tightened. I wanted to tell them how I had woken up at 5 in the morning to bake, how I had picked the flowers with care. I wanted to say, I just wanted one happy moment with my family, but the words didn't come. Instead, I nodded, smiled, and placed the cake and flowers on the kitchen counter. "I'll just leave these here," I said softly. As I turned to go, my daughter-in-law called after me. "Actually, we could use a little help. Can you lend us some money? Just for a few bills." I froze. I had spent hours preparing for this morning, bringing love and care in every step, and now, after being ignored, they were asking me for money. My mind went blank for a moment, and then I felt a quiet, steady calm rise in me. I didn't yell, I didn't scold, I simply looked at them, my heart heavy, but my voice soft. "No," I said. That single word carried a weight they were not expecting. I had given everything I could give, love, effort, presence, and they had treated it as nothing. My refusal didn't come from anger, but from a quiet realization that love cannot be demanded and respect cannot be borrowed. I turned toward the door, my long hair brushing my shoulders, and walked out slowly. The house behind me was silent, but my heart was louder than any shouting could have been. Walking down the street, I felt the sting of disappointment, yes, but also a strange sense of freedom. I didn't have to bend myself to fit into their expectations. I didn't have to trade my dignity for approval. I realized for the first time in years that sometimes love isn't about giving endlessly. Sometimes it's about knowing when to step back. That day, Mother's Day, began with flowers and cake, but ended with a truth I could not ignore. Love must be returned, respect must be mutual, and when it isn't, no gift, no effort, no sacrifice will make it so. If you've ever felt unappreciated by your family or had to stand your ground with love, share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that touch the heart. I've always believed that family is everything. My son, Jamal, was my pride and joy from the moment he was born. I remember cradling him in my arms, feeling the warmth of his tiny body against mine, and promising myself that I would always be there for him, no matter what. Over the years, I tried to make our home a place of love, a sanctuary where he could feel safe and supported. Jamal had married Tasha 2 years ago. She was a sweet woman, kind at first, but something changed after the wedding. I can't explain it. Maybe it was the pressures of family, or maybe it was her own insecurities. Whatever it was, I began noticing small shifts, subtle dismissals, a quiet tension whenever I visited, and little comments that made me shrink inside. Still, I held on to hope. I told myself, they're young, they're still figuring things out. Maybe it's just stress. So I kept baking, kept offering help, kept showing up with love and patience. My long hair often caught in the sunlight as I moved around their kitchen, a small comfort to me, a piece of normalcy in the chaos of their coldness. I would smile when Jamal smiled, and I laughed quietly when he made jokes, even when Tasha barely glanced at me.
I remember one evening, not long before that Mother's Day, we all sat around the table. Jamal was trying to cheer up Tasha, who seemed distant. I poured tea into delicate cups, my hands steady, and watched them quietly. I wanted to say something, to bridge the invisible gap that had grown between us, but I didn't know how. Instead, I told a small story about my own mother, a story of patience, love, and small sacrifices, hoping it would remind them of family ties. Tasha smiled politely, but it didn't reach her eyes. Jamal nodded, distracted, scrolling his phone under the table. That night, as I drove home, I felt a quiet ache in my chest. I wondered if I had done something wrong, if I had failed as a mother, if my presence had become a burden instead of a blessing. Yet deep down, I knew my heart had always been in the right place. I had given my love freely, without expecting anything in return. And still, the silence, the distance, and now the request for money showed me that love alone was not always enough. Despite it all, I wanted to understand them, to reach them. I remembered every small moment when Jamal had held my hand or called me just to talk. Those moments mattered. They reminded me that somewhere under the tension, there was still a connection worth protecting. But that Mother's Day, the quiet rejection, the unasked-for request, and the coldness I faced forced me to realize something crucial. Love is not just about giving. Sometimes it's about standing firm, knowing your worth, and not letting anyone take advantage of your heart. And that's when I made a choice that would change everything for them and for me. If you've ever felt unappreciated by your family or had to stand your ground with love, share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that touch the heart. After that Mother's Day, things didn't immediately improve. In fact, they started to feel heavier, like a quiet storm settling over our home. I kept visiting, trying to keep the peace, but every small interaction seemed to carry tension I couldn't shake. Simple questions about Jamal's work or Tasha's day were met with half smiles or distracted glances. It hurt, yes, but more than that, it left me feeling invisible. One afternoon, I went over to help with some chores, thinking that maybe action could bridge the growing distance. I brought over homemade bread, and my long hair, neatly braided, shone under the sun as I moved through their kitchen. "Mom," Tasha said, barely looking up, "we don't need your help today." Her tone was polite, but cold. I forced a small smile and set the bread on the counter. "Just thought it might be nice," I said softly, trying not to let my heart sink. Jamal looked up from his laptop, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, but he didn't speak. I realized then how divided they had become, not just from me, but from each other, and somehow I felt trapped in the middle, as if my love and efforts were being questioned simply for existing. Days turned into weeks. Invitations to family dinners became rare. Messages were unanswered. Even simple phone calls felt like intrusions. I wanted to reach out, to ask what was wrong, to fix things, but I didn't know how. I began keeping quiet, quietly observing, and silently hoping for a sign that they still cared. Then came another moment that pierced me in a way nothing else had. Jamal had asked me for advice about some bills, and I gave it freely, thinking perhaps our bond could be repaired. Later, I overheard Tasha on the phone, speaking sharply to someone about money and mentioning my name with irritation. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. The love I had offered so freely seemed to be taken for granted, treated as if it were owed rather than given. One evening, I tried to talk to Jamal alone. "Son," I said gently, "I feel like something has changed between us. I want to understand. I just want to be part of your life." He looked at me, guilt and confusion mixing in his eyes, but he didn't answer. He simply nodded, swallowed, and returned to his phone. That silence was louder than any words could have been. I began to realize that this wasn't about small misunderstandings anymore. Something had shifted, subtly, quietly, but permanently. I felt the weight of their expectations pressing on me, the subtle judgment, the assumption that I would always give, always help, always support without question. It was then I knew that a moment was coming, a turning point where I would have to make a choice between staying silent and letting them take advantage of my love, or standing firm and letting them face the consequences of their actions. My heart trembled at the thought, but deep down I understood that love without boundaries could be dangerous. And so I waited. I waited for the moment when everything would come to light, when the small tensions, the cold silences, and the quiet demands would collide into one unforgettable moment of truth.
It happened one quiet afternoon, the kind where the sun filters softly through the curtains and everything seems calm on the surface. I had gone over to check on Jamal, thinking perhaps a small visit could ease the tension that had built over weeks. I carried a basket of fresh fruit, my long hair falling loosely over my shoulders, a simple gesture of care I hoped might remind them of better days. As soon as I stepped inside, I noticed the air was different, heavier, colder. Tasha was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, papers scattered around her. She looked up, her smile tight and forced, and said, "Mom, we need a favor. Can you lend us some money for a few bills?" I froze for a moment. I had expected coldness before, subtle snubs, quiet frustrations. But this felt different. It was not just a request, it was a demand disguised as necessity, coming after weeks of distance, after my love and efforts had been brushed aside. My chest tightened, and I felt that calm, steady resolve I had held onto during all the small rejections rise to the surface. "No," I said softly. My voice didn't waver, but it carried a weight they hadn't expected. "I cannot do that. I've given my love, my time, my care. I cannot give money when my presence is treated as nothing." Tasha's face shifted from surprise to disbelief. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Jamal looked up, guilt flashing across his features, but he didn't speak. I took a deep breath, feeling the quiet strength that had taken me weeks to gather. "I mean," I continued, my tone calm but firm, "you cannot take from me what you will not appreciate. Love cannot be borrowed, and respect cannot be bought. I came here today hoping to be part of your lives. Instead, I am asked for money after being ignored and dismissed. That ends now." There was a long silence. The ticking of the clock on the wall sounded louder than usual, punctuating the weight of my words. Tasha's eyes welled up, and Jamal looked away, ashamed. I could see it, the realization settling in that they had misjudged me, that their actions had consequences they hadn't considered. I turned toward the door, my heart heavy but resolute. As I walked out, I heard Tasha whisper, "Mom, I'm sorry." Jamal followed, calling my name softly, but I kept moving, my mind steady. I had said what needed to be said. I had stood firm without raising my voice, without anger, without humiliation. That day changed everything. It was the moment they finally understood that love is not unconditional when it comes at the cost of respect. They learned, in the quietest way possible, that actions have consequences. And I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you value yourself enough to be treated with dignity. If you've ever had to stand your ground with family or felt unappreciated despite giving your all, share your experience in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that touch the heart. After that day, the atmosphere at home slowly began to change. It wasn't immediate. Nothing about healing family wounds ever is. But the silence that had once felt heavy now carried a different weight. A quiet reflection. I noticed small gestures, Jamal holding the door open for me, Tasha offering a tentative smile when I walked in, their eyes avoiding the coldness that had lingered for so long. I realized that my refusal to give them money wasn't just about the money. It was about standing up for my worth, my time, and my love.
For the first time, they saw me not just as someone who would always give, but as a person with boundaries, feelings, and dignity. And in seeing that, I could sense a shift, a recognition that love is most powerful when it is mutual, when it is earned through respect, not assumed. One afternoon, Jamal and I sat together on the porch. The warm sun touched our skin, and for a moment, the world seemed quiet enough for conversation. "Mom," he said softly, "I didn't realize, I didn't see how much I was taking for granted." His voice carried both shame and understanding. I nodded, my heart swelling with a mixture of relief and lingering sadness. "I've always loved you, Jamal," I said gently, "but love doesn't mean letting anyone take advantage of your heart." Tasha came outside, her eyes glistening. I'm sorry, too," she whispered, her voice barely above the wind. "I didn't mean to, I didn't see." She looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I felt the sincerity behind her words. I smiled softly, feeling the tension ease just a little. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it allows us to move forward without carrying the weight of anger. In the weeks that followed, we began to rebuild, not perfectly, not instantly, but with patience and intention. I started visiting again, this time with a sense of peace. I still brought baked goods, still carried flowers, but I did so without expectation. I had learned that love given freely is beautiful, but love that is respected is transformative. I could see the small changes in them too. They listened more, they thanked more, and slowly the warmth returned. Not because I demanded it, not because I raised my voice, but because I stood firm and let them face the consequences of their choices. And in that quiet, subtle way, we began to reconnect. Walking home one evening, I realized something important. Life is full of moments that test our patience and our love, but standing up for yourself with calm and dignity does not diminish your heart. In fact, it protects it, and it teaches those around you the value of respect. That Mother's Day had begun with rejection and ended with realization, and though the pain lingered for a moment, it had opened the door to a deeper understanding, for them and for me.
Looking back, that Mother's Day feels like a turning point in my life and in our family. What had started as disappointment and coldness slowly became a lesson in patience, strength, and self-respect. I realized that love alone is not enough. Love without boundaries can be taken for granted, and giving too much without care can leave your heart fragile. But standing firm, even gently, can create change. I think about Jamal and Tasha often. I see the way Jamal now pauses to ask how I'm feeling, really listens when I speak, and makes small gestures that show he remembers the value of family. Tasha, too, has softened in her approach. She no longer dismisses my presence, and I can see the warmth slowly returning to her eyes. It didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't perfect, but it happened because we were willing to face the truth together, that respect and understanding are just as important as love. I also learned something deeply personal that day. My heart matters. I can give and care, but I must protect myself too. I must stand tall, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it risks confrontation. For me, it wasn't about punishment or teaching a lesson harshly. It was about showing them that actions have consequences and that love must always be met with respect. That realization brought me a quiet peace, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Sometimes I still think about that morning, the cake and the flowers I carried with so much hope. I remember the pang of disappointment when they were dismissed and the sharpness of their unexpected request. But now those memories are tempered with understanding. I can smile, not because the moment was easy, but because it taught me to value myself and to gently insist that others do the same. Family is a journey. It is messy, imperfect, and often full of unspoken tensions, but it is also a place for growth, forgiveness, and quiet joy. And even when hearts feel cold, a single act of calm courage, a refusal, a gentle boundary, a quiet stand can open the door to healing. That Mother's Day changed me, but it also changed them. And now when I visit, I see the warmth returning, small but steady, like the soft light of a sunrise. Life doesn't always go the way we hope, and love doesn't always get recognized immediately. But when we hold our hearts with dignity and teach others to do the same, we find a way forward. And sometimes that quiet strength is the most powerful gift of all. If you've ever stood up for yourself or had to protect your heart with love, share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that touch the heart. Weeks turned into months after that Mother's Day, and I began to see the full effect of what had happened. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. There were no fireworks, no shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations. Just quiet changes, subtle gestures, and a deepening understanding between us. Jamal now took the time to check in on me regularly, not because he felt obligated, but because he genuinely cared. Tasha, too, seemed to be reflecting on her actions, her eyes softening when I walked into the room, her voice warmer than it had been in months. I realized then that sometimes life teaches its most important lessons in silence. We don't always need loud confrontations or angry words to make someone understand the weight of their actions. Sometimes a gentle refusal, a firm boundary, a calm but unwavering stance can speak louder than any argument ever could. That quiet strength, that steady calm, became my guide. I often think about how much energy we spend trying to fix others or force appreciation. I see now that true respect cannot be demanded, it cannot be coerced. It must be felt and returned naturally. And if it isn't, the only thing we can control is our own heart, how we respond, how we protect ourselves, and how we continue to love without losing our dignity. Sitting alone on my porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I reflected on my journey with them. I remembered the tears I had held back on that Mother's Day, the quiet disappointment, and the small smile I forced onto my face as I placed the cake and flowers on the counter. I remembered the shock on their faces when I said no to their request for money, and I remembered the long, silent walk home afterward. It had all felt heavy then, almost unbearable. But now, with hindsight, I could see the seeds that day had planted, seeds of understanding, growth, and mutual respect. I also thought about myself. I realized that for so long I had measured love by how much I could give, by how much I could sacrifice. And while giving is beautiful, I learned that loving oneself is equally important. Setting boundaries is not unkind. Saying no is not selfish. Protecting your heart is not cruel. It is necessary. And when we do this with calmness and empathy, we teach others the true value of love and respect. I feel a sense of quiet pride, not because I had won a battle, but because I had stood tall in the face of hurt, because I had chosen dignity over desperation, calm over anger, and understanding over resentment. That day and the days after became a part of me, a reminder that strength is not always loud and love is not always blind. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that teach us the most about ourselves, and this lesson, quietly lived, became a guiding light for the future. Now, when I think about that Mother's Day, I don't remember just the disappointment or the coldness. I remember the lessons it taught me about love, about respect, and about the strength that comes from standing firm and quiet dignity. That day could have broken me. It could have made me bitter, resentful, or withdrawn. But instead, it became a turning point, a moment where I learned the true value of my heart. Jamal and Tasha have changed in ways both small and significant. They now pause to notice the little things, like the effort I put into baking or the care I take in visiting. They express gratitude where once there was only expectation. And more importantly, they have begun to understand that love is not a one-way street. It flows both ways, nourished by kindness, respect, and acknowledgement. I have changed too. I carry myself differently now, more aware of my own boundaries, more confident in my own worth. I have learned that saying no does not diminish the love I feel, nor does it lessen the joy I can give. It simply protects the heart that gives so freely. And in that protection, there is a quiet strength, one that doesn't shout or demand, but simply exists and radiates a calm authority. I often sit on my porch in the evenings, the sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and I think about life's quiet lessons, how small moments of courage can ripple into profound change, how gentle but firm actions can teach lessons louder than anger ever could, how patience, persistence, and clarity of heart can transform even the most strained relationships. And I smile, not with relief, but with hope. Hope for the future, hope for deeper connections, hope for understanding that flows naturally rather than being forced. Family is not perfect, but it is worth the effort, the reflection, and the courage to protect your own heart while still offering love. I want anyone listening to remember this. Your love is precious, but so is your dignity. Protect both. Stand calmly when faced with disrespect. Speak gently but firmly when your boundaries are crossed. And know that real change often comes quietly in the hearts of those willing to reflect, learn, and grow. Life may not always hand us the moments we wish for, but it does give us lessons that can last a lifetime. That Mother's Day became one of those lessons for me. A day that began with hurt but ended with understanding. A day that reminded me that calm courage can be stronger than confrontation, and love guided by respect can heal even the deepest wounds. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of standing up for yourself, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories that inspire, heal, and uplift.